So what qualifies somebody to be able to do this, to be at I guess, somewhat of a control of someone's liberty? I mean, how do you take that on? How do you say that I'm ready for this job? I'm ready to consider these things.
Well, I think it's one of the reasons that I think in being a prosecutor makes me so uniquely qualified to be the judge, because this happens a lot when you have a jury trial. There are many people who will say, sure, I have no problem with this. I can do this. I look forward to doing this. And then you realize it's not like it is on television or a movie. And there's a human being sitting over there whose life is going to be altered, maybe forever, as a result of your decision. Yeah. And what seems to start out so easy for maybe a juror looking to hold someone accountable or to see that justice is served becomes a challenge. And those are thoughts that have run through my mind probably in every criminal case I've ever had. I don't ever just think that that's just some inanimate object sitting over there and whatever happens to this person. I think even in the worst of cases, I can't help but think that, that's still someone who potentially is going to be spending the rest of their life, in prison, or even if it is 1 year in prison. When you break it down and think what you would be doing a year from now, it helps put it into perspective that your decisions are sometimes monumental to someone. And I don't think I've gotten hardened over it from being a prosecutor. I think that I have become more respectful of knowing that what we do has a profound impact on someone else's life, in some cases for the negative and sometimes for the positive, if they're getting help. But I never take that for granted in any case.
And of course, everything that we do, every experience we have leads to who we are in certain roles. Being a prosecutor, how does that influence becoming a judge, if that would happen?
I think being a prosecutor, while not the only training ground to be a judge, I personally feel is the best training ground to be a judge, because there is a side to being a prosecutor that isn't the subject of television, or isn't something that we may even think of. We just think of the man or the woman that we see on a Dateline or something, trying to hold someone accountable in a horrible case. Okay, that's the exception. That's the end product that you see. And when you get to that point, sure, you can become very self-righteous and want to prove someone has committed a crime. But there is so much that leads up to that moment when you are even into a courtroom. Nobody knows about the number of cases where we simply say, there's not enough evidence here, we aren't going forward. That happens more times than people would probably realize. That it's not that the police officer did anything wrong. There's simply not enough here. We cannot make that decision. We cannot make that decision to proceed on. Yeah. And that can also have significant ramifications that many people never even know about, because maybe there is an alleged victim that is going to hear that we don't have enough to go forward. But those are some of the most difficult parts of being a prosecutor, to tell someone that. And unfortunately, it happens. We have a burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt that we do not take lightly, and we will not just bring a case to appease someone and then figure it out later. Mm-hmm. It is something that has to be figured out and reasonably certain of. It's not that every case ends maybe the way we'd like, but more of them do than not. Mm-hmm. And that's because we have to put the work in on the back end to make sure that there is enough. And it also requires then, if there is enough, that you are well-versed in the law, that you're well-versed in the rules of evidence, in the rules of criminal procedure, at times civil procedure as well. These are all of the things that a judge needs to be able to do. Mm-hmm. And not a half hour from now, I'll get back to you. It is now, in the middle of a case, you have to be able to respond. You have to be able to make a decision, and not just, wing it, figure it out as you go. It has to be made now, and it has to be somebody who is comfortable in handling. I know I'm dwelling a lot on the criminal, but those are the cases where people are potentially losing their liberty, and it needs to be somebody who is comfortable in the courtroom, who's regularly in the courtroom, and who has handled courtroom work.
And see, maybe I'm just kind of blown away by professionals, but there's no handbook to how you have to run a courtroom. There's no.
You're right.
I don't understand. The ones that I've been in are run very similarly.
Well, there is to extent there's a handbook as far as the rules of evidence go, but that is when there are often disputes that come up, and there is a blueprint of as far as how the court goes, as far as an opening statement and who presents the evidence first. But a lot of there are different nuances that can come up in between. There are often issues that are not a part of that playbook that arise. You have to be able to get that rule of evidence, to get that rule of law reasonably quick, and also to be right when it comes up, because unlike we see it all the time in sports, where if the umpire gets it wrong, they go back to a camera and check out back in New York and see what happened.
Yeah.
That's not how it works in a courtroom. It needs to be right the first time, and there's no instant replay.
So with that kind of pressure, I'm just gonna come out. Why would you want to do this?
Well, we have to have somebody
Sure.
that does
Sure.
that.
It's gotta be you, though.
Yeah.
In your mind.
In my mind, I believe I'm the most qualified to do it, and that's the reason I think that I decided to run for the position. I know I'm in the courtroom a great bit. I know that I don't know of. There are very few types of criminal cases that I have not handled, from aggravated murder to speeding cases, and really everything in between. And Ryan, I would say that when you have covered that spectrum of cases, it gives you the confidence to know that I can handle situations that come up. And just when I think I would have thought that even Judge O'Farrell, who has got to be close to his 40th year, I know a couple years back, we had a man who just could not refuse to be cooperative in the courtroom. And I remember I'd never had that come up before. I mean, there's people who have acted out or have spoken out, but this was way beyond that. And I thought, that one's going to go in the memory bank as to how I would do this, because I thought Judge O'Farrell handled it perfectly. He must have, because it didn't get overturned on appeal.
Yeah.
And there's always something new that comes up, but I think that experience, that confidence you get from handling, an aggravated murder case to a speeding case, it helps you make the right decision.